Grazia Giovanati is preparing this meal just like anyone else would. The main difference? This lasagna has no gluten. That's because Giovanati has celiac disease. Gluten is toxic for her. If she eats ingredients like wheat or flour, she gets cramps and bloating. That means she has to know what foods she's buying at the grocery store. She says she often finds foods that say they are gluten-free, but she'll turn the package over and find ingredients that aren't safe for celiacs. The federal government recently announced changes to the labeling requirements for foods that could be harmful to allergy sufferers. It believes the new labeling requirements should close some of those loopholes. It will now force manufacturers to label proteins it didn't have to before. Health Canada currently allows manufacturers to label a food product as gluten-free if it is 20 parts per million of gluten. Abbott says they are looking at further tightening the requirements for gluten-free labeling for the next round of changes, but others say those requirements are already too rigorous. Marian Zarkatis is a member of the Canadian Celiac Association. She worked with Health Canada to draft the new labeling requirements. She says the federal government is recalling certain products that say they are gluten-free because they have small amounts of gluten in them. This happens because foods may come into contact with gluten when they're packaged or made. This can happen if an item is packaged using the same equipment that previously had flour or wheat on it. As a result, manufacturers are getting out of making gluten-free products altogether. Back in Giovanati's kitchen, she's getting ready to put her lasagna in the oven. Despite the labeling changes, she still doesn't trust anything that claims to be free of gluten, and says it should be the government's responsibility to make sure that when something says gluten-free, it actually is. For Capital News Online, I'm Mark Brownlee.